What's our topic? I forget.
How to get things done.
How to get things done.
Yes.
God, that's curious.
May I introduce?
Yeah, go on. Say something.
A Buddhist nun for almost 40 years now. Coming from Australia, the founder of the Liberation Prison Project, an organization that helps people in prisons around the world to find more balance through meditation.
Well, study Dharma.
And study Dharma.
That's right.
Yes. On the 45 flights in 2018, Venerable Robina...
No, 70 flights, 45 centres.
45 centers. Venerable Robina knows how to get things done. And I'm so glad, Venerable Robina, that one of those flights took you from Stockholm to Zurich.
I'm happy to be here.
Here just for a day, moving on tomorrow.
Yes.
So very, very grateful
Okay.
to have you here.
Good.
And grateful to have you guys here. It's a full room today. I hope everybody is reasonably comfortable today. Thank you very much for coming. This event has been put up by a Laksam study group, which is a group of amazing friends, I would say, who meet here every week on Tuesdays to study Dharma together and to practice meditation together and to somehow find more meaning together. And about 6 months ago or so, we've had this amazing idea, dream, that we would like to start a proper real meditation center where everybody is welcome, where Buddhists, non-Buddhists find a spot to meditate for themselves, a place where they could study philosophy, psychology, or simply find a way to deal with their emotions, or maybe a quiet place here in Zurich. So, amazing idea, but guess what? Locations don't drop down like rain from the sky in Zurich. We have been working really hard to work out the budgets and everything else, and things did not really just happen because we had this idea. We still need to figure out how to actually do it. And I'm sure that all of you have had moments where you just want to get something done, but for whatever reason, whether it's a personal thing or spiritual thing, it just doesn't work out. So I hope that the topic is relevant to all of you. And Venerable Robina, please tell us how to finally get it all done.
So then we just sing a little prayer to start. It's expressing two thoughts. So anybody in the room who already identifies with being a Buddhist, these first two lines are relevant to us, and that is to say it's reiterating our reliance on the Buddha and the Dharma and the Sangha. And the last two lines are really expressing a kind of, I think the Buddhists would say, setting our motivation. We might say stating our purpose, why we're here, together. We want us to listen to these views, views coming from the Buddha, A set of the bottom line, fundamentally, it's about how to develop our amazing potential. The mind is really Buddha's expertise. It might not appear to that on the surface to us when we think about Buddhism, but essentially Buddha deals with the mind. And as far as he's concerned, the mind is everything. The mind, it comes down to the mind, Success, happiness, suffering, these things. So we're going to look at a bit of this, talk about it, to see if we can find some tools to use to help us develop our marvelous potential so that we can live our lives, act. And that really is it. Anyway, so we'll talk. So I'll sing a little prayer. Sangye charan soke chonam la jancho baru dagni kyab suchi dagi chönyen gibe sonam ki drola benche sangye drupa shok sangye charan soke chonam la jancho baru dagni kyab suchi dagi chönyen gibe sonam ki drola benche sangye drupa shok Sangye charan soke chonam la janchu baru dagni kyab suchi dagi chönyen gibe sonam ki drola benche sangye drupa shok. Well, it sounds simple enough, doesn't it? Get things done, but actually it's something interesting. So there's this really good analogy, I think it's very relevant here. There's this very nice analogy in Buddhism, and it's really a way of framing all of Buddha's methodology, all of Buddha's path, It's that a bird needs two wings, wisdom So I suppose you could say that getting things done belongs to the compassion wing. Because if what you're going to get done isn't useful to the world, then I'd rather you not do it. So we have to imply that what we want to get done in our life has to be something that is beneficial. And I'm not trying to say we've got to walk around looking holy all the time, but this is something really fundamental in the way Buddhism looks at everything, you know, that we can see, you know, we live together, we're very social beings. From the second we're conceived, you know, we have already relied upon a mother, then we have fathers and siblings and aunties and uncles and people out there in the world. And then throughout our lives, we're constantly contacting with human beings, with people, with sentient beings, animals and people. So in other words, then we have action, we act. So we have a mind that thinks and feels things. And that's where Buddha's expertise comes in. But that's the wisdom wing. That's where we've got to start sorting out yourself first. I mean, so just to go out and do something, you can't, if you want to go out and play the piano, that's getting things done, you know you've got to first do the wisdom wing, which is learn theory and learn music and practice really hard. If you want to be a cook, you've got to learn theories. If you want to, you know, build a house, get things done, you've got to learn the techniques. So everything, I think, means that. If you don't know how to do something, you want to get things done, I want to go and buy a house, I want to rent a centre. Even as we're talking, we had a cup of tea just now. You want to rent a centre. You can't just walk in and rent a place. You've got to think it through what you want. You've got to imagine what it is. You've got to use your mind. So the wisdom wing is crucial. Without this, you can't. I mean, the Dalai Lama, as he says, compassion, action, if you like, is not enough. You've got to have wisdom. It's got to be based on intelligence and common sense, and crucially, on what we could call virtue. So that word makes us nervous sometimes, but it just means ethics, you know. Because if we look at the whole of Buddhism, can be framed in terms of its being a bunch of methods for how to get happy and how to stop suffering. Equally, it's a bunch of methods of how to help and not harm. Either way, it comes down to the same thing. And the whole of Buddha's approach, these two are utterly coming together. So wisdom, it sounds kind of interesting, you know. What's wisdom got to do with it? Well, in the Buddhist way of seeing everything, the reason we can't see things properly, the reason we don't know what to do, the reason we can't know how to act properly that's useful, that's beneficial for ourselves and others, is because we're lacking wisdom. And what that means is very practical. What it means is, you know, that our mind is full of nonsense. So one way of framing the whole Buddhist path in terms of the mind is we've got lots of positive qualities, intelligence, kindness, love, compassion. These are the ones that enable us to function properly in the world, and these also happen to be the ones that are the source of our own happiness. This is really fundamental to the Buddha, you know. So then we've got another set of states of mind, and these are the problem. And this is really, Buddha's view of this is very, very particular, you know. One way of dividing the whole Buddhist model of the mind is in terms of these neurotic, we've got these negative, neurotic, deluded states of mind. We've got positive, useful, productive states of mind. These two main lots. There's a third lot, but that's another discussion. And these are the things that we have to learn to work with. So the heart of the job of being a Buddhist, the wisdom wing, the initial work, is learning to know your own mind. Because the Buddha is saying the extent to which I'm caught up in fears and ego and anger and depression and, you know, I can't do, I'm hopeless, I'm no good, the world is a disaster, I hate him, that's horrible, all the unhappy stuff in us, is the extent to which we're caught up in that, which is normal human behaviour, join the club here, is the extent to which we are miserable and that we can't be much use to others, and indeed we can't get things done. I mean, in the practice, assuming the things we want to do are useful. Or indeed, you can see lots of people are very capable, but they run around using their skills to harm. Lie, steal, kill, manipulate, run businesses and cheat people. You know, I mean, they're very good at doing things. But misusing the human energy. So the Buddhist view is all about, one, getting happy and stopping suffering. You can say it that one way. You can equally say the Buddhist approach is all about getting wisdom and stopping all the rubbish. They come to the same thing. Because the Buddha is saying the extent to which we're caught up in fears and ego and jealousy and depression and low self-esteem and anxiety is the extent to which, one, I'm miserable, and two, I make a mess of my relationships, and indeed can not be successful. So the bottom line for the Buddha is to work on ourselves first. Absolutely fundamental. And that's not, we often hear that as being selfish. Often we think of a spiritual path and we think of it in terms of compassion, got to help others. Absolutely true. But how can you help others if you're a complete mess yourself? You can't. It's not possible. But, you know, we can kind of hear this, but it sort of seems fairly casual. But this is the heart, really, of the Buddha's approach to life, you know. So this means, from the Buddhist perspective, we have to understand the human mind. So that's fine. We all learn about psychology. We know all these amazing famous people, Freud and Jung and Lord knows who, you know, coming up. And these days, people coming up with views about the mind all the time. But the one main thing that, you know, that is surprising initially to us is when I say the words that the mind is Buddha's expertise, it's a surprise to us. Because we think Buddhism, we think religion, we think spiritual, we think it's as a third component. We've got a body, a mind, and some kind of spiritual soul. Well, Buddha doesn't talk like that. He doesn't talk like that at all. He talks about body and mind. And then his view of the mind is very specific to him. In fact, all of Buddhism, all of the Buddhist, you know, what Buddha's, the goal, the final goal for Buddha is that we can all become a Buddha. Buddha, it's a Sanskrit word. And the Tibetan word for that word is very interesting. The etymology of it is very tasty, and it tells us the result, the goal, which implies the method. So the word Sangha is very interesting. The first syllable, sang, implies, and this is what Buddha is saying, we've all got the potential to accomplish. It implies the eradication completely from our mind, our consciousness, all neuroses, all fears, all ego, all depression, all anger, all jealousy, which is kind of a shocking concept. Because I think we just assume those qualities, which we all recognize, are normal, natural parts of an ordinary person. Then not only that, Buddha would suggest, the second syllable, ge, that implies that we can develop to perfection all the other qualities, intelligence, wisdom, kindness, love, compassion. But I think in our ordinary view of a person, we give equal status to all of these, and we think a normal person has a bit of all of these, a bit of this, a bit of that, a bit of depression, a bit of love, a bit of anger, a bit of jealousy. That's normal. So if you hear Buddha's words very clearly, it's really quite shocking. It's quite a very bizarre concept. I mean, I don't think there's any model of the mind in our culture that would suggest that you can utterly go beyond all fears, all anger, all depression, all neediness, all jealousy. They so much for us are normal. Yeah, we wouldn't mind getting less of them, but there's no view that says you can rid yourself utterly of them. It seems just too abstract. But that's Buddha's view. And where did Buddha get this from? Well, from his own self. This is the job he did. He's simply presenting to us what he has done himself. And this is an interesting point too, you know. I always quote this. I think all over the world I've noticed we all ask the same questions. When we come to this type of thing, we all ask the same questions, you know. But there's only one question I've ever heard one person ask, and it was actually a scientist in New Zealand, and he said, who revealed the teachings to the Buddha? Which is a totally valid question if you're a Christian or a Muslim or a Jew, which asserts a superior being called God, and that means, and God is the creator. So naturally all the teachings coming from human mouths is coming from revelation. Well, he was very shocked when I said nobody revealed them to him. I said, Buddha's like Einstein. You would not ask Einstein, who revealed relativity to Einstein? And you think that, you would all laugh. It's hilarious, because we know Einstein used his own head, and he came up with these observations himself. Well, that's Buddha. That's where Buddhism's come from. This person called Buddha. He didn't make it up. Let's hope he might have. You've got to check up. You know, he's not speculating. It wasn't revealed to him. He didn't have a vision of it. And he's certainly not asking us to believe it. That's really fundamental to know. So even though he deals with things that we think of as religious, when you hear about karma, reincarnation, that just seems that's the stuff that we think you've got to believe in. Not for the Buddha, no, of course not. You take it as your hypothesis. But he would say he's observed this. Everything he's telling us is what he has observed himself with his own mind, and therefore his methodology basically is what he used. And he says, okay, this is what I've found to be so, this is what I've found to be possible, here's my methodology, try it out for yourself. Which is what we call science, which is a surprise to us to hear it so bluntly, but that's the Buddha's view. So his expertise is the mind. That means he's delved deep into the human mind. But that's curious because we don't have methods like that. We delve into the brain. We use our microscopes. Yes, we have therapy. and we talk about experiences, but the Buddha's expertise is the actual way the mind works. And this is something quite, initially we don't even get this. He's not discussing the workings of the brain at all. He's discussing the workings of the actual cognitive process of all of our thoughts and feelings and emotions and the unconscious and subconscious. And you're really seriously doing the job of being a Buddhist. This means you need to learn the Buddhist model of the mind, which we'll talk about, and then single point of concentration, or so-called mindfulness meditation, but really the skillful technique that enables us to plumb the depths of our mind, where we can really do the job of unpacking and unraveling the contents of our mind. This is the wisdom wing, and it's a serious, full-on job, you know. Because the Buddha says what goes on in here, in the mind, Tibetan's point here, is the main source of everything else that we do, of our happiness, of our suffering, of our actions, of our body and our speech, our behavior. What goes on in here is the source. This is fundamental for the Buddha. Now, this is not what we think in the world, and that's perfectly fine. Buddhism is another presentation of the world, you know. So, for the Buddha, what goes on in here, everything comes down to that. So, therefore, we have to know our own mind well. And then on that basis, we can do the compassion wing beautifully. We can act. We can get things done because we become. The more we work on our own mind for the Buddha, the less deluded, the less angry, the less fearful, the less depressed, the less jealous, the less anxious, and I'm being literal here, the more capable, the more fearless, the more intelligent, the more wise, the more persevering, the more patient, the more forgiving, the more loving, the more compassionate. So those are what enable us to act. I mean, you know yourself, if a person's overwhelmed by anger every day, they're paralyzed. They can do nothing except to harm. A person's overwhelmed by depression every day. You can't even get out of bed one morning. So it's kind of clear what goes on in here determines the quality of our life. But we don't quite join the dots as strongly as the Buddha does with all this. We tend to think of it as secondary, you know. So this is the essence of the Buddhist approach. You've got to know your own mind intimately and well. And then knowing it's not set in stone, because he's not talking about the brain. He doesn't mean there's no brain. He's not arguing there's a brain. That's not what his problem is. He doesn't deal with the brain. He's dealing with the actual cognitive process of all the thoughts and feelings and emotions themselves. And that's something that I think we don't have much. That's not how we think, I think, in our modern. Not how we think. So we have to understand the mind. And then to realize that the more we're depressed, the more angry, the more anxious, the more jealous, the more low self-esteem, the more paralyzed, the more miserable, and then what we do is a mess. It's sort of fairly evident. You know, but like I said, we don't join the dots quite as strongly. So the Buddha's idea is kind of, you want to make others happy, you want to act, you want to do things, work on your mind. You want to make yourself happy, work on your mind. Change your mind. The words are simple enough, change your mind. Sounds so simple, but what does it mean? You know? And then, of course, the compassion wing, helping others, doing things, getting things done. And again, like I said, if the things that you want to do are not going to be useful to the world, then just don't do them, please. So when it comes down to it, it's sort of fairly simple in a way. What we do is with our hands, without what we do, whether it's a job or whatever, has to be something that's useful. It's sort of fairly obvious, you know. Why would you want to build a house that doesn't work, that falls down? Why would you want to do a job that makes things that harm people? Why would you want to, grow food that poisons people? It's not trying to be moralistic, it's practical. Why would you want to do any actions that wouldn't bring a good result that can be of benefit to some people? It just seems reasonable, kind of common sense, you know. Well, that's called the compassion wing. It's like the action wing, you know. But if your mind's a mess, if you're angry all the time or jealous or fearful or depressed, we'll make the wrong decisions and it's like if you don't know architecture, you'll build the wrong house. It'll fall down, won't work. You don't think things through properly. Whatever you do, even go to rent a new centre, you don't think it through properly, what the needs of all the people are. What do you really want? Visualising it, imagining, which comes from common sense, which comes from the mind. And if your mind's a mess, then you'll end up renting a messy centre. It's sort of obvious. So, let's look at the Buddhist model of the mind. The words that Buddha uses for the contents of the mind, as I've already expressed, they're words that we are completely familiar with. Completely familiar with. Ordinary words. You know. In psychology, in our world, in psychology, one of these new things we keep coming up with, like, new terms, new concepts about the mind. Buddha's still using the same words they've been using for 2,500 years, And they're the words we use naturally. So let's look at them, the contents of this mind of ours, which on the face of it seems really simple, but his view is so distinct that it takes a while to hear how it's different, or what his approach is. Okay, remember, the only reason to want to work on your mind, therefore the only reason to meditate, so-called meditate, because meditating is a function of the mind. Now, Buddha doesn't own the word meditate, but it's certainly something that people, associate with the Buddha. There's many methods of meditation. So, like I'm saying, really how it works, it's Buddha's expertise. It mightn't be expertise that you like or even agree with, but that's not the issue here. It is Buddha's expertise. And that knowledge about the mind has come from the experience of the person who's called the Buddha and anybody else who's done the job since, It's coming from internal. It's internal knowledge. It's not meant to be cosmic. So the Buddhist model of the mind is kind of deceptively simple initially. We make it way more complex when we talk in the West, in our models, in our views of psychiatry and psychology. Buddhism almost seems deceptively simple. It's very interesting. So as far as Buddha is concerned, we've got kind of, if you like, we're going to go into more detail, ego-based, neurotic, you would have liked that word, deluded, unhappy states of mind. We know them well. We just say the word jealous, depressed, anxious. No one kind of cheers. Wow, it's fantastic. Love anxiety. Not possible. We don't. Well, there's lots of these, but we can get down to some fundamentals. Then you've got the other stuff. These ones we all know, like I said, intelligence, kindness, patience, these things. Now there's a third category, and these are really quite crucial to understand too. I like to call these the mechanics of the mind. Concentration, good memory. There's lots of these that they identify in the Buddhist model. So they usually refer to these as neutral, but that's misleading because it doesn't mean they're not important. These are the kind of states of mind. If you're a sniper, you've got to have good concentration. You'll be in trouble if you don't have good concentration, right? So clearly a sniper needs concentration. Well, so does a good cook. So does a meditator. So it's not negative or positive in its nature, but it's a crucial state of mind that is necessary to function in doing whatever you're doing. So that's why they call these negative, positive, and neutral. But there's very specific meaning in these, So the only reason, so then Buddha's saying this stuff, what goes on in the mind, I want to say this again, we hear it, but we don't hear it, is the main source of our suffering and our happiness. But right there, we don't agree with this. We actually think that what goes on in here is the result of what goes on out there. My husband's mean to me, therefore I'm angry. So our anger, we know we have anger, we know we have jealousy, we know we have depression, we know we have happiness and intelligence, but we tend to think of it first as a function only of the physical, second, coming from our genes and DNA and mummy and daddy, and third, coming from events and things that happened in the past. This is something very deep in our bones, actually. And it could just sound like theory, but it's got a really powerful implication, experientially. So we tend to assume that my responses, what goes on inside my mind, are merely the responses or the result of certain things out there. That's really quite profoundly deep inside us. So if we're a Christian, we will say God made us. If we're a materialist, and most of us to some degree or another, even if we're religious, we have the materialist philosophical view deep in our mind, we will say, Mummy and Daddy made us, which means they gave me an anger, they gave me depression, they gave me kindness, they gave me being good at football. That's very deep inside us. It seems like just, who cares, they give it or they didn't. But in a way, that view underpins so much of our life. So we're always looking out there for what happened back then, like looking for a needle in a haystack. What causes me to get angry? What happened back there that's caused me to start getting angry? What happened back there that caused me to be a happy person? What treatment would I have received from my parents? This is very deep for us, very natural. We think like this. Now, Buddha doesn't disagree, but conditions play a role. He just says we're way overemphasizing their role. He says we're not looking at the main thing. Now, we might know the anger's mine and we can even change it, but to say it's the main source of happiness or suffering, what goes on here, that's extreme, but that's literally what Buddha's saying. And this is hard to hear because it absolutely disagrees with the usual views we tend to have. So in other words, instinctively, when something goes wrong, when the husband cheats on me, instinctively, no one has to teach me this. No, forget my husband. When I was a little girl, my sister's mean to me. Instinctively, I will feel and express that she is the cause. Mommy, Janet was mean to me. I'm angry. Why? Janet was mean to me. So it's natural. We think my anger, we agree I'm angry, but we believe it comes from Janet, from this, from that, and therefore, indeed, my genes, my DNA, my chemicals. Now, this is not arguing that it doesn't play a role, but the Buddhist approach is way more direct and very hard because it's against the instinct. He says we are capable of learning to unpack and unravel the actual cognitive process called anger, anxiety, jealousy, love, compassion, whatever you like. That his methods, his approach enables us to unpack and unravel these, what he would say are elaborate conceptual stories that we're deeply habituated with. And this is our job. He says we can get rid of anger completely. This is a bizarre concept to us. We can completely get rid of all ego. That's even more weird. It just seems like religion. It sounds so peculiar. Because his view of the mind and how it works is fundamentally different in many ways. Fundamentally different. But hearing it on the surface, it doesn't appear to be. We all know the words love, compassion, anxiety. Yeah, okay. So he's saying our job is to learn to become familiar with the mind and then learn to own what's there, it's mine, and then to change it. But just accept it as a given. This is who I am, what to do. I'm born this way, which is how we tend to think. It's set in stone. So that's why if we do get depressed easily, get angry easily, we get depressed about those things. We get depressed about depression, depressed about anger, because we think it's set in stone. This is who I am, what to do. Because it feels so naturally instinctive. It's like we didn't learn it. It seems to come from nowhere. Like I can tell you guaranteed, my mother did not have to teach me how to be angry. I had it down as a child. So this is why that reinforces our feeling, well, this is who I am. It's set in stone. The Buddha's view, from his own experience, is they're not. They're not set in stone. There is no part of our mind we can't radically change. And keep remembering when I say the word mind, I'm not referring to the brain. The word mind for Buddha is the actual cognitive process itself, the thoughts themselves, the feelings themselves. And this is not the way we tend to think about the mind in the modern views, So if we look at these so-called negative ones, let's keep that word very simple. Don't get, it's not moralistic. It's looking at the states of mind that the Buddha would say are the ones that are breaking our hearts. Not out of guilt that we should be thinking these things, out of just self-respect, And even to some extent we know this, but still, I know I'm angry. I know I'm jealous, but the tendency we have, because I so believe it comes from him and her and that event and that thing, the feeling we've got is, yes, I'm suffering, I'm angry, I'm jealous, but I'm allowed to be jealous. Look at my husband's behaviour. So we do everything in our power almost to support our right to be these things, feeling that I'm a victim of something that isn't my fault. This is interesting in the way Buddha talks about ego. Lama Yeshe would often say ego is like self-pity, which sounds pretty cruel, but it's quite complex to hear all these assumptions inside us. But this is what we have to learn to unpack. All this stuff is so deep inside us, and all these assumptions about this stuff and where it comes from. We've been building it up over all the years of our lives, and we take it all for granted. So when we first hear Buddha's view, on the face of it, it sounds very cute and nice, but it really is based on a series of very different assumptions, and it takes time to really work with it. Because the first instinct is, what do when Buddha says, well, Robina, Buddha says you can learn to get less jealous. But I'll say, what are you talking about? Why should I get less jealous? It's his fault. He should change, not me. What do you mean I should change? It's shocking to us to hear that. It's like, what are you talking about? This is why to try and hear all this stuff as practical, not as like moralistic. You shouldn't be angry. Got to give it up. No. The simplest one Buddha's saying is, like I'm saying, he's saying that's what causes you misery. That's very hard to hear. No, he doesn't. My anger does not cause me misery. My husband does. That's so instinctive to us. It seems like childish to talk about it like that way, but that's what we feel. It appears to us this way. We believe it's this way. So if I go to tell you that my husband's been cheating on me, and I'm so jealous, well, I understand, Robina. Of course, you are jealous. That's natural. So it's not my fault. So the Buddha's one, it's not a question of fault. It's almost like what he's saying is, I understand, Robina. I understand, honey. And if you can change it, if you can get him to stop cheating, well done. What if you can't? What if you can't? That's the hard work. That's when it starts. He says, you know what? I've got some methods. You can change your jealousy. You can lessen it. That's all he's saying. It's so extremely practical. But this is like a minefield for us, but it sounds like morality. So it's good and bad and guilty and blame. We're very heavy with it all, So to get past all that heaviness, just to hear these as practical techniques to help us become happier, lighter, wiser, more capable human beings. Because life is horrible. There's no question terrible things happen. Good things I'm talking. But there's no question people harm us. There's no question we get fired unfairly and husbands cheat on us and children reject us and people lie to us. Of course these things happen. The world is appalling in how we harm each other. Buddha's not arguing with that. He's just giving his methods. Okay, his bigger picture too even has reasons why all that's happening. That's called karma. We might get into that. We'll see what happens. Okay, if we have to learn to, initially, before we start to really benefit others and be useful, we have to learn to be, work on our mind, or be our own therapist, our own psychologist, as Lama Yeshe puts it, which is the job of being a Buddhist, really. There's two main things involved, two main components necessary. One is the skill to be able to look inside. And don't hear that as mystical in any way at all. It sounds very cosmic to us. To listen, to know how to listen intelligently, how to observe intelligently. No, just to observe what is going on in here. This is the hardest job we'll ever do, because we spend our lives looking out there. So that's accomplished by utilizing this extraordinary psychological skill invented by these Indians thousands of years before the Buddha. It's called single-pointed concentration, known as in Sanskrit as shamatha, in English as calm abiding. It's the name of the result of this particular skill. It's called meditation, but as soon as you use that word, we lose the plot. It's a psychological skill that these extraordinary beings before the Buddha, these Indians, cultivated, created, invented. I remember hearing on the BBC, I always tell this story, but hearing on the BBC World Service on the radio one time, an interview with some archaeologists who were investigating this Hindu civilization, you know. They said that what was utterly unique about it was there were no evidence of any weapons. No evidence of any weapons. And for a culture of humans, that's utterly rare, they said. Now that says something astonishing about these people. I mean, Buddha got born in that environment. Buddhism came out of that environment. But what do we know about India? I always say this. You know, we European, Christian, Jewish people, we love the Greeks. I don't know about in Swiss, your language, but in English, half our fancy words are in Greek. We love the Greeks, you know. But what do we know about Indians? Nothing. Zero. So that really just the last few years has been really dawning on me, really striking me as something very fascinating. It was the Dalai Lama who just casually said in one, I think that's something I read, it was his Indians. I think he said 3,000 years ago, but more than that, I forget, were the ones who first began this extraordinary investigation into the nature of self. Now we thought it was Mr. Freud 100 years ago, didn't we? Excuse me, with respect. Thousands of years ago, but we don't know that in our world. We don't study, don't think about it. And if you do think about India, it's these strange people, ladies with red dots on their foreheads and, you know, some weird, completely unrelated world. But what is remarkable is this understanding they cultivated with this skill. They unpacked and unravelled the contents of the human mind. That's utterly invisible to us. Even as Buddhists, we can't say those words because we don't think about it. And this is not the way we think about the mind in our world. That's what's fascinating. The model of the mind that's still taught and studied, and what I'm using as my basis here, in the Tibetan monastic university system, which has been the last, 1,300 years, coming from the Indian monastic university system, coming from the Buddha, coming from these Indians before the Buddha, several thousand years ago, they came up with this model of the mind. And it's completely internal. It's describing the internal workings. Okay, the Buddhist view over the centuries has sort of reconfigured that a bit, but the fundamentals have come from those years, from those Indians. So you've got to ask, where did they get that knowledge from? This is something that it takes time for us to hear, from investigating internally their own mind. And we don't have an equivalent of that. And the key skill that they cultivated that enabled them to do that is called single-pointed concentration. Known in the world broadly these days as mindfulness meditation. It's coming from that skill. The way we train ourselves in the world now, and there are many variations of this mindfulness meditation, many interpretations of it. We won't ever get single-pointed concentration, it's not taught to that degree, but it's coming from this technique. And essentially, all it is, or what it is this extraordinarily disciplined skill that enables you to go literally, and this is abstract for us, to go beyond the chaos of the day-to-day conceptuality, which we know is chaos from the second we wake up until the second we go to sleep. There's just this chaos in our mind running continuously, and we just call that natural. Well, this technique, which the Buddhists use, enables you to completely and totally subdue that chaos. Not just to go to sleep, no, but to harness all that energy, to be able to go beyond the conceptual, beyond the sensory. We don't posit such a level of mind. To go to these more subtle levels of the cognitive process, our own consciousness itself. And that's where finally, when you get to the Buddhist point, that the mind itself is not physical. That's mystical to us. That's religious. That's not provable, we think. Well, if you have this technique, it is provable. Very simple. It's all there. The techniques are all there, still practiced every day by people this minute. It takes several years to get it. If you're really capable, you can get it. This astonishing state of mind, utterly unknown in any modern psychology, where you've got utter control over every single thought. There's a book I've just finished editing that's going to get published next year by Lama Yeshe called about Mahamudra meditation. A wonderful book. And there's a small chapter in there, Lama in his wonderful, inimitable way, kind of raving on about all the qualities that you would have, the benefits of having accomplished single-pointed concentration. Well, you'd have utter control over every single thought. That sounds like insanity to us, not possible. You'd naturally, because you access these more subtle levels of consciousness, which are levels of consciousness, like I said, we don't even posit as existing in our world, but which naturally have the capability of cognizing phenomena that the grosser level can't. And that includes the minds of others, the past, the future. So clairvoyance is a natural consequence of this technique. And this is just natural for the Buddha. It's all there in the technique. It's all there, you know. We'd have clairvoyance. You'd be utterly blissful, joyful all the time. You'd have complete control over all your thoughts all the time. This is a single point of concentration. Now, for the Buddha, that's just the first step. Now, you're using this amazing, honed, laser-like, skillful mind to now unpack and unravel the contents of the mind, because now you've got some control over it. And that's where you do the actual job of the second mode of meditation, which they call insight. That's where you learn to do the job of unpacking and unraveling and radically reconfiguring your own cognitive process. That's what being a Buddhist is. That's what being a Buddhist is. To the degree, that's a serious level of it, you know. Most of us will just touch on the surface of that. And we're discussing not the brain and not anything physical. We're discussing the internal workings of the mind. And this, like I said, the Buddhist model of the mind is still based upon the model these amazing Indians before the Buddha came up with. This technique is coming directly from them, you know. And then Buddha, of course, so then their deal was investigating through the understanding of the mind, the nature of self. So they came to their own conclusions, their own findings. Pretty amazing, these beings. And then Buddha got born in this world, and then he diverged in his own direction. Specifically in relation to his findings directly, internally, about the nature of self. So it's dealt with the mind and the contents of the mind when you study it in depth. It's astonishing. I think modern science will be absolutely fascinated to study this observation of the way the mind works. But they've just got to posit the possibility that we're not talking about the brain, that's all. Which is a bit of a shock to us, you know. So this is why very simple. Okay, this is implying the Buddha's view, just as a point here, that your consciousness does not come. This is fundamental for the Buddha. Fundamental point. The whole of Buddhism as a big, vast world view, which from the big picture point of view is what it is, would collapse into a heap of utter absurdity if our mind were merely the brain and that we got it from mummy and daddy. So even just as to take as our hypothesis, that this consciousness of ours, Buddha says we come fully programmed from the first second of conception with our own stuff. Nothing to do with mummy and daddy. Hitler's tendencies did not come from his little old Austrian housewife mummy, or his genes, or his DNA, or his grandpa and grandma. Very simple for the Buddha, although that's quite shocking to us because we so assume that we are the product of the physical. And of course that's the scientific model, so this is quite shocking to hear so bluntly, you know. Don't just believe it, but want to look into it. It doesn't mean that mummy and daddy don't play a role. They're the catalyst, that's all, they're the catalyst. Their behaviour and how they are with me catalyse what's in here already. Okay, I like the big picture in Buddhism. Maybe we'll get into it later, we'll see what happens. But even just as a statement here, this implication that we come programmed into this world with our own stuff, the real experiential implication of this is it's mine. And this helps us own it. Instead of, yes, I'm angry, but he caused it. It's not my fault. That is instinctively, we can never look at our anger if we do that. Never, ever, in a million years. And we can never look at anything else in our mind either. Until we own it as ours. And that's part of the painful process. Once we can do that, you're on a roll. You know? Once we can know humbly, yep, I've got a tendency to get angry. Yep, I've got a tendency to be kind. Yep, I've got a tendency to play piano. And Buddha gives equal status to those, whereas we make this massive difference, you know. Intellectual, creative, we're happy to own those. Why are you good at piano, Robina? Well, I have practiced for 10 years. What do you expect? I'm honoured to own my own hard work. Why are you good at anger, Robina? Oh, that's my father's fault. It's like saying, oh, it's Bach's fault that I can play so well. Oh, that's Bach's fault. Nothing to do with me. But when it comes to moralistic stuff, moral stuff, we can't bear to own it. It's very fascinating. We're all like this. And that's the main obstacle. That's the main obstacle. That's the main obstacle. It's so instinctive in us, so painful, so hard. Like, Buddhist, not Buddhist, I don't care what you call yourself, it's very profound to be able to see this. You don't have to be a Buddhist to see it, and if you are a Buddhist, doesn't mean you see it. Go around Buddhist centres, and there's always disharmony and dramas, and it's his fault and her fault, and she behaves badly, that's why I'm angry. We can't help but do that. We have to find something that somehow gives us permission to be angry, to be hurt, to be depressed, to be jealous. And as soon as we do that, that takes away the responsibility to do something about it. And I'm not trying to be heavy when I say that, but this is how we are instinctively. And this is why even if you just want to speak simply about getting things done, oh no, I can't do that, it's too hard. Oh no, I can't do that, the weather's too bad. Oh no, I can't do that because I'm not intelligent enough. We always find reasons that are preventing me from doing what I want. Like we blame things. It's very deep inside us to do this. So this gradual ability to own my own tendencies, my own mind. It seems the words are simple, but it's profoundly difficult. And it's not blame. Nothing to do with blame. It's accountability. It's kindness to yourself, because now you can own it. You can do something about it. This is the hardest job we'll ever do. It's kind of interesting. Only because our views that we tend to assume are right, like arguing with this. Second, because the habits are very deep. And I think third, because we don't notice the problems until it's almost too late. So it's a bit like, you're driving on the freeway at 120 miles an hour, kilometres an hour, whatever you do in Switzerland, 400 kilometres an hour. Is it like Germany where there's no rules? There's rules. Okay. So it's like you're driving, fast on the freeway, and suddenly you notice the wheels are falling off your car. Now we know that will be a freak thing to happen. We know that because we have really good maintenance. We know how to take care of our car. We know we can pretty much guarantee that out of the blue the wheels won't fall off. Well, that's an analogy for us. We don't notice we're angry until the words are vomiting out the mouth. We don't know we're depressed until we can't get out of bed one morning. Meaning we don't notice the problem until the wheels are falling off. That's why we have such tortured, difficult time with our emotions, because we don't notice them until they hit the body, until they start to express themselves through our behaviour. And Buddha says there's way more we can do well before it hits the body. This is why, because if we think of our mind as our body, this doesn't make sense. But that's the Buddha's view. We have to learn to get concentration, some semblance of concentration, which really gives us the ability to step out of our own head and to begin to pay attention to all the crazy thoughts, and start to make sense of it. But that implies understanding Buddha's model. It's like you can have perfect mindfulness, concentration on that massive overgrown green stuff out there. You could have such concentration that you could even replicate the whole garden in a drawing, which means you've got very good mindfulness, very good concentration. But what if you don't know botany? You still, what's the point of being able to look at a garden and even be able to replicate it in a drawing if you can't distinguish a weed from a flower from a herb? So you've got to have one, concentration, which gives you the skill to step out of your head and start paying attention to what's happening. But two, you need Buddha's botany. In this case, the Buddhist explanation of the contents of your mind, so that you can begin to identify what's there. And this is not something we think about. And when people learn mindfulness, they don't hear this. Because there are many misconceptions, I would suggest, about mindfulness meditation. And there's many variations of it. And in a way, Buddha doesn't own that. People can say what they like. They can make up their own. It's okay. But if you want to call it Buddhist, we better know what Buddha means. So one of the misconceptions is you only meditate, it's an alternative to a pill. So if you're blissfully happy in love with your new girlfriend and everything's perfect, and someone says you should meditate, they'll laugh at you. Oh, but I'm happy. Why should I? Which it really means we only start to want to meditate because we think it's instead of taking a pill, which means it'll make it all go away. And that's what we desperately want when it's the problem, isn't it? We desperately want it to go away. We cannot stand the pain. And that's why we've left it too late. You know, the commonest question is, I'm having a fight with my husband. What do I do about it? Well, that's like asking, what are you going to do when the wheels are falling off? A bit late. You know, damage control is the best you can do. At least try not to kill him. But it's too late. And I'm serious about this. If we learned, if you had maintenance, and I mean this is cute, but it's profound. If we knew how to be familiar with the workings of our own thoughts and feelings and emotions since we're little, and then learn these techniques every day so it becomes part of our life, you would never get to the point of wanting to kill your husband. You would never get to the point of not being able to get out of bed one morning because you're so depressed. And I mean that literally. But we think it's mystical to say that, because we don't understand the workings of these thoughts and feelings and emotions. I'm not being rude about it. We wait till it's too late. You wait till you're 200 kilos overweight before you realise you're not eating well. It's absurd. I mean, we have marvellous techniques to maintain the body, our houses, our streets, our plumbing, our cars, but not the cognitive process called the human mind. We do not have. Pretty much. That's Buddha's expertise. So it's not joking to say that if you brought up with, these techniques, this ability to know your own mind well, you'd be able to and this is where we spend the rest of the day just on this. Once we start to do that, that means we're able to recognize the thousands of conceptual stories deep in our bones that are what inform the emotion. So we notice what's going on in the mind only when it hits our body, when our body feels it, when the anger's coming and the mouth's screaming, or you're depressed one morning, can't get out of bed. That's when we notice what's happening. It's because we've never paid attention until then. It's like you've never paid attention to your car. Now you notice when the wheels are falling off. It's too late. And this is really practical. So we learn techniques to help us pay attention to what's happening. And that doesn't mean you sit down to meditate to make all the thoughts go away. That's like hoping you just paint over the problems of the car. No, you've got to get to the root of the problem and solve it. That means knowing your own mind. So first of all, the first point here has to be to want to own it as yours. Yes, your husband's a creep. Everyone agrees. You get my point. Yes, the job is horrible. Yes, the weather is bad. Yes, the headache is terrible. They're the physical things. They're the external things. So this is huge. Now let's look at my mind, which essentially is the responses to these events, if you like. They're the things that happen in me that are catalyzed by those events. So what I've got to look at is what it is in me that is to be catalyzed, which is my own anger, my own fears, my own jealousy, my own depression, my own anxiety. And it's like out of kindness to ourselves, not out of guilt. That's how we do it now. So we're guilty. I shouldn't be angry. I shouldn't be jealous. I'm so depressed. Well, you mean it's my fault? That's how we talk. It's so inappropriate. Where's my glasses? So anybody have a question so far? I'm going to go into detail. Any questions? Any old question, doesn't matter. Okay. So, let's look into these states of mind then. But let me just say the point again. There are two things necessary to do this job of unpacking and unraveling and eventually, yes, reconfiguring this mind of ours internally. Two things. One is the skill to concentrate. And this is, practical. You want to make a cake. If you can't concentrate, you're in serious trouble. It's sort of obvious. This is not religious. Concentration is not religious. I'm talking about spiritual. A sniper needs concentration, you know. A dog needs concentration. To do anything properly, good or bad, you've got to have concentration. So it's a practical issue, you know. It's pretty obvious. You need to be focused to some degree. You've got to focus. It's sort of completely obvious. That's necessary. It happens to be that Buddha's really an expert at this. He's the one who's got this amazing skill, coming from these amazing Indians before him. You know. Anyone on the planet can learn it. It just takes time and discipline and the will to do it. But because, just incidentally, because we have so many misconceptions of what it is and why you're doing it, then we lose the plot completely. You know? So the first thing is to have concentration, to some degree. Some ability to step back is really all I'm saying. Now, the second thing you need, because while you're concentrating, this is the point now, it is not to make the thoughts go away, the feelings to go away. That's one of the fundamental misconceptions. And that's what we desperately want, because we wait till the wheels are falling off and it's too painful. So we meditate in the hope that it'll go away and I'll calm down, I'll feel better. That's what we're all hungry for. We want to feel better. So we're desperate, you know. That's good. It's like taking a pill if you've got a headache. But the headache's because you've got cancer. You haven't solved the problem. You're just making the pain, some of the pain go away. But it's not the purpose of getting concentration using Buddha's skill. That's not the purpose. It's a mistake to think that. It's a bonus if your mind does calm down. But that's not the purpose. This is a really crucial point to understand. The purpose is to be able to see more clearly the junk in your mind. Not just make it go away, but you want to become familiar with it. So why would you want to do that? Because we just think that's going to make us worse. Well, it's just the same with your garden, and I mean it in the most practical way. You don't know botany, okay? And you've got this mess out there. So first, you've got to learn to focus. You've got to look at what's happening there, all these things. You've got to look. But what's the point? Like I was saying before, this is a serious point. What is the point of looking if you don't know how to call and label what you're looking at? If you can look with really concentrated mind and all those bits and pieces growing, you see this thing growing around this way and a thing going around that way, but you've never heard of botany and you don't know how to identify what you're looking at. Well, that's called idiocy. That really is called idiocy, and that's often what we think of mindfulness meditation. And I want you to hear this point really simply. Not only do you want concentration, but you've got to have botany in your mind. You've got to learn botany so that when you look more closely, you can go, oh my God, I never realized before. That's a weed and there's a herb. I thought they were the same thing. Do you see what I'm saying? It isn't to make all the weeds go away is why you're focusing. It's to learn to actually identify more clearly, to become familiar with all the weeds, and then distinguish between a weed and a herb. That's the job of working on your mind as a Buddhist. You get concentration. The bonus can be that if you do it in the morning, you might calm down, but you might not. That doesn't mean you have a bad meditation. You have a good meditation. The real purpose of concentration in the long term is to get such clarity, such concentration. So now, then the second thing you need is you learn Buddhist botany, which is Buddha's model of the mind. And that means exactly what is it that is, what is a negative state? What function does it have? What qualities does it have? How do I identify it when I focus with my focused mind internally? How do I distinguish it from a positive state of mind? Because these are cognitive stories. This is not how we think in the world. So it's quite an intricate approach, quite precise. So part of the problem here is this. Because we only notice the anger or the depression when it's physically, when the body's involved, when it becomes physical. So then that's when the wheels are falling off. So that's when we're so desperate to make it go away. All we want to do is make it go away. That's why we go crazy. That's why we kill each other or ourselves. because we can't bear the pain. And we don't have methods to look at it. We only have methods to blame the husband or blame the other thing or look for something out there that's the cause of it. So this takes courage. This takes courage to want to look into your own mind. But then when we even hear that, look into your own mind, we go, what do you mean? We don't get it. We can't hear that because we don't talk like this. And that doesn't mean, you see, when we do that with our therapy, and this is nothing wrong, we then start to remember, if I want to go to my therapist and I want to start looking into, we look into my life. We look into what mummy did. We try to unpack memories. We try to, looking for a needle in a haystack at the events and how I developed the habit to be depressed or I developed the habit to be angry. We look at the things out there, looking for the cause of my anger, the cause of my depression. Now, there's nothing wrong with doing that because external conditions play a crucial role in our life. But finally, when it comes to it, that's not the issue for the Buddha. That's not the job to be done. What we have to learn to become familiar with is the thoughts and feelings and emotions themselves. So this is it's impossible if we don't have a method like botany to identify a weed from a herb from a flower. You can have as much concentration as you like I said, you can even replicate it all in a drawing. You've got photographic memory of everything in that garden. But that is idiocy, like I said, until you can identify what is in the garden. So the only reason you have focus is so that you can identify the weed from the flower, from the herb. Now the work starts. Same here. Exactly the same here. And we're using Buddha's model. We've got neurotic, deluded, disturbing, demented states of mind. We've got valid, reasonable, virtuous, positive states of mind. And then the third lot are all I like to call them the mechanics of the mind, the concentration, all the bits and pieces that when they're really developed, and they are developed in concentration and meditation, they're the parts of your mind that enable you to do this job of distinguishing between the weeds and the herbs. Because right now they're like mixed together in one big fat soup of emotion. We can't tell one bit from another. And this is the skill we have to learn. So now the part that seems most abstract to us, because we think of anger, we think of depression, we think of feelings. The body's involved. Just feelings beyond intellect. It feels like beyond words, beyond thoughts. But this is what initially seems shocking to us, but this is Buddha's point. The more we are able to focus the mind, the more initially, this is the point, naturally what happens, the more you focus on one thing, all the crazy voices inside you are just that you don't pay attention to them so much, so they naturally calm down. So your mind, when you seriously get concentration meditation under your belt, when you seriously get some levels of concentration, then you have really, literally calmed down, temporarily of course, all the crazy thoughts all raining on in there. You have, there's no question. That's what you get from concentration. But now you have to use it, this concentration. This is the second mode of meditation where you do the actual hands-on work of unpacking and unraveling, of identifying the weeds, the herbs, the flowers. Because you see more, you can see and listen and hear more clearly. So this is the point the Buddha is saying. We are caught up in feelings. In other words, when the body's involved. Which is why it takes a second to recognize that a person who gets angry easily is angry, because the words are coming out of the mouth simultaneously. But it's not so difficult, not so hard to realize for a person who gets depressed. It takes years to notice. And it's only when you can't get out of bed one morning, because it's not so evident, because we're not paying attention here. So the first thing we have to do is have this kind of clarity, and this takes time, the clarity to distinguish that the anger's mine and my husband's behaviour is his. This is already huge. This is already unbelievably advanced. This is already so adult. This is massive already. Are you hearing me? This is unbelievably massive. Even just recently at a Buddhist center, there's one person who gets really angry and hurts people, apparently. She gets excited and gets angry. She does amazing work as well. She's really good. But of course, some people are fearful. Some people get nervous. Some people feel offended. I mean, join the human race here, It's like happens every day in everybody's families, in work, So even little serious little Buddhists, but when in the meeting we had, believing completely this person's at fault. But this person, really good person, the victim one, not the angry one, really believing that she was allowed to be angry about the angry person. You can hear from even our conversation, she can't even hear. She knows she's angry, but so convinced I'm allowed to be because this person's horrible. That's so deep in us, that philosophy. To get what I'm saying is the first one of the crucial parts in this job is to at least theoretically in our mind know, yep, hubby cheats on me. I mean, that's extreme. If you're still with him, it's extreme. I mean, if you haven't left him by now, you're a dummy. If he hasn't changed his behaviour. Get my point. I mean, whatever. Just using an example. Anything. But to really have this clarity first. Yes, he has got a problem. He's breaking our contract. It's a fact. But now what's my problem? Yep, it's called jealousy, Robina. This already is so advanced. Just to be able to distinguish between his behaviour and my thoughts. That's massive. And that is the step that is necessary. Otherwise, if you believe you're right to be angry, you will never look at your anger or try to change it. Why should I, will say, it's his fault. This is so deep in us. This is really intense. This is already really grown up. It takes enormous courage. Then the work starts. Okay, let's investigate my anger. But then we just go blank. What do you mean, investigate my anger? It's a feeling. How can I investigate a feeling? That is true. You can't. So what are you going to investigate? Well, as you learn this Buddhist model of the mind more and more, you get to even know theoretically the difference between the neuroses and the virtues. Really simply speaking. That's one thing. So let's say I'm in love with my husband. Let's say I'm not mad at him this time. It's just the same thing. And that means I've got two things. I'm massively attached to him. I over-exaggerate his deliciousness. I believe he's the cause of all my happiness. And there's a multitude of things along attachment comes with, which is a delusion, Buddha says. But it's mixed with love, which is a virtue. Love wants him to be happy. Love is altruistic. But we literally can't tell the difference. This is like the weeds and the flowers. The weeds and the herbs. We can't tell the difference. We can't tell the difference. So first of all, we can't tell the difference between his behaviour and my thoughts. That's the first step. At least distinguish and be honest. The anger's mine. The bad behaviour's his. I can't change him. What can I do about myself? That's the first step. Then the hard job is to then learn to distinguish either between the attachment and the love, or between the anger and the the anger and whatever. But here, the attachment and love is a good example because we really believe attachment and love are the same thing. Attachment is under the first heading. It's called it's under the negative state. It's a negative state of mind. And as far as Buddha is concerned, it's the main cause of suffering in day-to-day life. Primordially deep inside us. It's multifaceted. We'll go into this in a minute in more detail. So then on the basis of this bottomless pit of hunger, emotional hunger, which then expects him to make me happy, possesses him as mine, has massive expectations, makes him look more delicious than he really is, constantly believing he's the source of my happiness. So all this enormous neediness is there. And then along with that, fortunately, I also have the virtue called altruism and compassion and love, and I want him to be happy. And I'm kind to him and these things. But I can't tell the difference between attachment and love. Well, one is poison and one is medicine, It's like herbs in the weeds. We can't tell the difference. We can't tell the difference. But they're utterly and completely different. And this itself is so difficult to get to. Then you've got anger. Even sometimes in another scenario, you could have, you see a person being harmed and you straight away have compassion. The next second, who did it to them? And then it turns into anger. So we can't often tell the difference between anger and compassion. Like in our political activity, for example. We can't tell the difference between anger and compassion. We have to, because this is like the weeds and the herbs. They're completely different. So the difference with the Buddha, the point is this: the difference comes when we start to go more deep into the mind. Theoretically, we have to know this first. That the emotions, the physical, when all this anger or jealousy, these habits in us, even love and compassion, they bring feelings as well. Physical feelings. But that's the only time we then notice we're feeling things, because we don't pay attention to here. So this is the job that Buddha's getting us to do. On the basis of concentration, on the basis of learning his model, Buddha's botany, knowing what is a herb and what are its characteristics and how you distinguish it from the weed, that's fundamentally necessary. Once we've got this skill and can step back, once we've got that theory clear, then what we're able to do more and more every day is because we've learned the skill, is we learn to pay attention to what is happening in here, as much as we can every day, before it gets to the mouth. That's all. You see, normally, like even if you've got a normal day, you wake up and you feel you're anxious, but you're not paying attention because you're so busy getting clean, fixing your hair, washing your teeth, doing the breakfast, and worrying about your plans, Hop in the car and you're driving. And yes, you're all on autopilot. But the anxiety's there, and we can feel it. But we're not paying attention. We're not paying attention. We haven't dealt with it from yesterday, day before, it's been building up, because we haven't paid attention. So then the car jumps in front of you and you lose the plot. Now, once you learn this, this is a skill to step back and start to focus, just merely to focus your mind. Nothing cosmic, nothing fancy, not to make the thoughts go away, not to have a vision, not to have a good feeling. Just to focus. It's a skill, a technical skill to be able to focus the mind. So because we're learning to focus, naturally when you're doing your 5 minutes of meditation or 10 minutes, you can't help but hear all the raving on. I call them my roommates. All the thoughts in there. Thousands of thoughts. There are thousands of thoughts. I like to call them my roommates. And they're what we're living with every day, isn't it? There are thoughts that we're living with every day. And we don't understand what they're on about. We don't know where they're coming from. We don't know what they're saying half the time. They're completely unedited. It's like chaos, isn't it? So then, because you learn to focus, and you're learning to focus your mind with your eyes closed, and you're watching the breath, let's say, you're training your mind to focus, you're developing this ability to pay attention, then you're stepping back a little bit. You're not the thoughts, you're not wishing the thoughts will go away. That's the wrong thing. You don't care. But even if they're raging, you're training yourself to pay attention to one thing, not to the thoughts. But out of the corner of your eye, you can't help but hear them. Now that's actually absolutely excellent. That's why they say, even in the first of the 9 stages of single point of concentration, the classic technique that's thousands of years old, they say that one of the signs of success in the first of the 9 stages is that you think you're getting worse. It's like you go to the gym, you come home with muscles you didn't know you had. Well, you're not disappointed, you're glad about it because now you know the problems. It's the same with our mind. We have to not just wish they'd all go away. You want to see them and hear them. It's the opposite. It's like you don't just look at the garden and hope that you just don't look at all the weeds. The only reason you're going to concentrate on the garden is so that you can see the weeds even more vividly. Because now the next step, you know what to pull out. Same here. So even when you're doing your 5 minutes of concentration, we would say a successful meditation is if you feel good. No, mistake. It's a bonus if you feel good, but that's not the purpose. The purpose is to focus. The purpose is to not follow every crazy thought mindlessly, like we're like this usually, so involved in it. It's like you're lying there for 4 hours at night and you can't go to sleep. Your mind is completely berserk, right? But you don't remember a single thing you thought, not one. Because there's no awareness, you're just swimming in it, drowning in it, isn't it like this? So when you do your concentration, you're stepping out of it for a few minutes. You've got using your confidence, your discipline to stay on that focus, to stay on the breath. All the thoughts are pulling you frantically to go here and there and follow them, but you don't follow them. You wander off, you come back to the breath. You wander off, you come back to the breath. So you're training yourself to get focused. You're training yourself to pay attention to one thing and to not pay attention. But you don't care if they're there or not there. You're not wishing they'd go away. You're not scared of them. In fact, you are happy to hear them because now you're noticing the weeds more. That's just in your meditation. You're not doing anything about it yet because your job is to concentrate. So now in your daily life, you bring to bear this capacity to concentrate. You're more aware. So then you're becoming more conscious of all the crazy thoughts, all your roommates. But you learn to get braver. So then when you're driving the car, you're noticing the anxiety, you're noticing the worries, and then you're dealing with them, you're talking to yourself, you're being your own therapist. It's all right, Robina, everything's cool. Check things, it'll be okay, you do this and fix this, and it'll be all right, relax, it's cool. You're talking yourself through it. You're more conscious. So when the car comes in front, because you're more conscious, and you're more in charge of what's going on, you don't have a panic attack. Are we communicating here or not? It's really hard work, but it's not cosmic, it's not mystical. It's not to make things go away. You've got to become more familiar with your mind, because then you can, more familiar with the weeds. Not just vaguely know there's weeds and herbs out there. You've got to get the clarity to see it clearly, and then inform that concentration with the intelligence of the botany. Now you know how to identify what's there, and then next step, you know what to do with it. You pull out the weeds and grow the herbs. Well, here it's more complex, but it's the same principle. Way to go before the anger disappears. So now we're getting to the point. Buddhist psychological model says the emotion is when the physical is involved. That's the tip of the iceberg. That's the tip of the tip of the tip of the iceberg of the problem. So once we've got concentration, once we've got some semblance of understanding of the Buddhist model of the delusions of this and this, and they have these qualities and they're this and this and this, and the positive ones are this and this and this, like you can distinguish a herb from a weed, then you got to realise that the tip of the iceberg, the feeling, the emotion, which is in the body as well, it's informed by these very strongly practiced, habitual, conceptual stories that anger, delusions, attachment, jealousy, love, compassion are actually their bare bones. They are conceptual opinions about something. This is really hard to see. And we practice them really strongly, which is why they're so spontaneous. So we've got to kind of almost slow the process down so you can start to get down to the more subtle level and hear all these conceptual stories that are informing the physical emotion of anger. This takes time to get to see. Are we communicating here? Now you have to ask me some questions. It's your turn now. Just top it up for me. Any questions about this? Does it make sense or does it sound confusing?
Makes sense.
Huh? Good. Are there any questions? Any old question, please. Thank you. No questions.
Yeah, I don't know.
Go on then.
If you're already there, for example, that you are angry.
You're already in the midst of being angry.
Yes. And then
Right.
what can you do? What shall
You
I
see,
do?
but that's you just missed everything I said. I want to burst into tears. No, listen. You're just asking me, what do I do when my wheels are falling off? That's what you're asking me, isn't it? You're on the freeway and your wheels are falling off.
Yeah, but sometimes it happens.
But no, that doesn't happen if you have good maintenance. Excuse me, that's the point. You might have a crash, that's a different discussion. Your wheels will not all fall off at once because you've got, that's my point, come on, this is the whole point I'm getting to.
I understand that.
Well then don't ask the question, what will I do if the wheels are falling off? The point is, what's your learning from it? I'm giving you the learning from it. To get back to basics. Don't wait till you want to kill somebody before you notice you're angry. I've just given an hour and a half I've just done is all the deep, clear presentation of what to do. But then you ask the question that we asked first.
Okay.
No, don't be sorry, but it's a really
sometimes
good...
it's still there because, for example, when I meet my kids.
But no, listen to me, sweetheart. You're not hearing my point at all. I understand exactly what you're saying. We are all exactly where you're at. We don't have the techniques. We don't know how to maintain our mind. We don't have any concentration. And we don't understand the Buddhist model of the mind. So then we don't know what to do when we're about to kill the kids. That's the point. That's what I'm trying to answer. I'm not giving you the answer what to do when you're about to kill your kids. At least hope you've got enough awareness not to kill them. It's about the best. It's damage control. All I'm doing is, once you notice that you get angry and you're about to kill your kids, you have to say, not what can I do, but not what can I do next time I get angry, but what can I do to start changing this entire old habit? And that's what I've been answering. So you've got to go back to, you've got to start learning about car mechanics and go to. I mean, you've got to start asking the serious question: what is the long-term job I've got to do to get to the point where one day I won't get angry? But that's what I've answered you for the last hour and a half, and clearly you haven't heard it. And this is why I'm saying these words are simple, we don't hear it. And it's great that you asked it. It just shows my point that it's not that easy. Because, you've heard this before, haven't you? Many times. I know. This shows how hard it is. So you're just proving my point. So thank you for proving my point. So can you give me anything at all from what you've heard the last hour and a half? Can you remember anything I've just said? I'm not trying to embarrass you.
Yeah, okay.
To answer your question,
So
what are some of the things I've said in the last hour and a half, which has been exactly the answer to your question? What are some of the things you've heard? Or that you know from your own
I
experience?
think the most important thing is that many things are not coming outside but from inside.
First one. Fantastic.
It's very important that immediately when something happens, that is because of you. First of all, that's why you have to not react.
That's right.
Something like that. Yeah.
That's right. So that's
And
already,
definitely not going.
so that's already fantastic. So what else did you hear?
Okay, then.
You've heard it many times before. It's okay.
Yes,
I'm not trying to test you.
Yeah, then another thing is to learn your emotions, feelings, whatever, with this single point of concentration to learn and to control your feelings.
No, I'm not saying any of that. I didn't say any of that. I didn't say that at all. I actually didn't say that at all. That's because these words are simple, and because we have a series of assumptions about what you think concentration meditation is. You said your assumption, not what I said.
Okay, and I understood that then.
So what do you think so why are you concentrating? Why are you learning to concentrate? Why would you need to have some little bit of mindfulness meditation every day? Why would you, what are you trying to go, what's the goal? What's the purpose?
You can see them probably clearly, the things what is going in you.
That's going to happen anyway, but what's the goal of that type of
A
meditation?
single point of concentration.
What's the goal of it? What's the long-term result, the long-term goal of that type of technique?
That type of technique. That you can concentrate, I mean, then you can try to understand.
No, not understand anything. No. It's
you
a
have the method.
It's a simple technique of learning. It's like you're trying to walk on a tightrope. You have to learn to simply focus. No, forget that. Cancel. It's simple. What this technique is a simple psychological skill to learn to pay attention without forgetting what you're doing. So you've got to pay attention to the breath. It's called training yourself to concentrate. Then next step is what you do with that concentration. But the technique itself is really simple. You're learning to concentrate on one thing and not. The next step is now with that concentration, because you're learning to step out of your own head for 5 minutes, naturally in the day as well, you can't help but hear all the thoughts. And that's good, because now you're seeing the different parts of your mind that are the source of your drama and what you're trying to change. So that's the next step. Good, so you have heard. But to ask the question, what do you do when you're about to kill your children, that's too late. I hope you just don't kill them. But this is in other words, the learning is not just, what to do, my wheels are falling off. No, what is the big learning is, well, what am I missing? What have I got to learn to make sure that my wheels will never fall off again? I mean, that means you've got to learn mechanics, or go find mechanics and do maintenance. And all I'm talking about is day to day. This is maintenance of your mind. If you do this a bit every day, you keep getting better at it, and you keep getting better at seeing your mind, and better at it every day. And then of course there's more to it than that. Like in the Tibetan Buddhist tradition, we've got these purification practices, which are said to work at a very deep level. You've got your little bit of practice at the end of the day where you regret the rubbish you've done and you make a decision to change. You've got to use lots of skills to help yourself want to change. And then when you do get angry, you recognise it, you own it, you don't try to kill yourself because of it, and you pick yourself up and you say, okay, I'll do better next time. It's like you're learning something. Every time you make a mistake on the piano, what do I do when I play the wrong note? Well, you just pick yourself up and you play the right note, and you keep practising until eventually anger won't be your habit. But don't hold your breath, it's going to take a while. So it's a whole process. I'm trying to make it a practical, internal process, not something mystical and cosmic, you know. Do you understand?
Yes,
I know you understand.
Yes. So I wanted immediate results.
Well, we all do.
Yeah.
That's right, exactly. That's exactly right. What else, people? Nobody else? No question? Yes.
I'm asking a question for people who are new to Buddhism. What do you
Can I stop you a second? Do you mind if you don't do that? Let them ask it. If they have the question, let them ask it. You're not their mummy. So why don't you ask your question, if you have one?
I have my own answer, I think.
Well, then you don't ask it. Let them, they can answer their own question.
Fair enough.
Thank you very much.
I have a question.
Yeah.
You said that like the Buddha makes no distinction between, oh, I'm good at playing the piano and I get angry.
No, that is tendencies. That's right, exactly. It's an interesting point. Like tendencies from habit.
Right. But it feels impossible to, like, I don't know, treat those the same way to me.
Okay, what I'm talking about the same way, meaning that they're simply habits. So, I mean, do you accept the word habit?
Yes.
So a person who plays the piano, they've developed the habit to play piano.
Mhm.
And a person who kills people develops a habit to kill people. I'm talking about the point of view of just simply being habit. I'm not giving a moralistic judgment on them. I'm not giving them a judgment. I'm not giving them a qualitative, I'm simply talking about and this is Buddha's meaning of karma. Simply the habit of thinking and doing, saying, the action of doing and saying something builds up this tendency to keep doing it. So in that sense, good at piano, good at music, good at killing, good at kindness, identical. They're a bunch of habits. They're not a qualitative distinction. That's what comes to morality. That's a different discussion. Are you seeing my point? Are you meaning that point? And are you finding it hard to see this?
I thought that you said that to be an adult you have to kind of own those things.
Oh yeah,
and,
that's right. As your own tendency. That's right.
And almost see them in the same way.
Yes.
Like not see one as good and the other one as bad.
No, I did not say that. Ever, never even indicated that. That's not what I mean by giving the same status. That's a qualitative judgment of them, good or bad. I didn't say that. I'm simply talking about the bare bones idea, which is the Buddha's view of karma, which is habit. The more you do something, the better you get at it. Whether it's killing or lying or playing piano. That's all I meant. But not saying one's good or bad. I didn't say that at all. Can you see the point I'm making?
Yes.
So part of what I was saying there was that we have no drama when it comes to being good at music or good at mathematics. We're very honoured to own responsibility for that tendency being our own. We're happy to thank our mummy and daddy and the piano player and the teacher who are the catalysts of that being good at piano. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
But when it comes to being good at anger, we don't say, you're out, because I've practiced it. What do you think? We never say that. Do you understand that's the point I was making. We're happy to own the tendency to be good at piano and own that I've practiced it really hard.
But with piano, it feels like I've put an effort to buy that. Whereas with anger, it seems like,
No, that's because you think that. There's a person who's good at piano. I mean, no, it's because that one's a habit. And no, nothing to do with it. The fact that you're good at, there's a bunch of assumptions in there that we're just born with it, you see. But Buddha's talking about karma. You come into this life, good at music, good at piano, good at anger, good at love, good at all the things you are that make up your personality. They're all, in this sense, they're all yours, and they come from your past practice of them. That's all. So I'm making the point that we're honoured to, I know what you're saying, because it feels like anger just happens, but they're all just a bunch of habits from your past. The logic of karma is that you're good at something because you've done it before. So if you get angry easily, then you're good at it because you've done it before. It's very insightful, that. And then if you're good at piano, you know you've done it before, so you are honoured to own it. But anger, we tend to think it's not my fault, and it's an old habit, it's in my genes, it's in the DNA, and it's my child's fault. So it's not my fault. That was the real issue I was trying to get to at that point. But that still doesn't really speak to you, though, does it?
No. Thank you.
Do you understand the point?
Yes.
Yeah. So owning being good at piano, that's it. We love that one. But even when it comes to not being good at piano, because it's true, I just didn't practice enough. We're even brave enough to own that. Sometimes not. We'll still blame the piano or blame the teacher. You understand? What else, people? Something else. It's lunchtime, isn't it?
I'm
What time do you have planned for lunch?
About 1.
Okay. So what questions, people? No questions. No questions of any kind. Always relax and enjoy. I think have lunch then.
I mean, also, if anybody is worried about asking a question in English, you can also ask in German. Or we can
Good. I didn't think of that. I'm so sorry.
Ja, ben ich machen.
Migräne kriegt, zum Beispiel, ist das denn ein Ausdruck von Ärger?
The question is, could migraine be
Can't hear you.
could migraine, like a
Yes.
strong headache, be some kind of result of anger inside?
Oh, darling. Not. I mean, you know. Oh, that's a very interesting point. No, you see, the bigger picture point of view in Buddhism, and we might get that into this afternoon. I'll see how we go. You know, is they talk about karma, talk about from past things. We come into this life programmed with lots of things, including our tendency to get migraine, or to have a knee ache, or to be good at music, or whatever. So there's a whole way of describing all that. But I think you can certainly say that if you've got the tendency to get migraines, that doesn't come directly from anger. But you could argue maybe that when you get all stressed and upset, well then for sure it triggers the headache. But you could argue it wouldn't be the main cause of the headache. Like people often think, oh, you know, cancer, you get it because you're anxious and you're stressed, and if you stop being anxious, you won't get cancer. But maybe there are deeper reasons for the cancer, deeper reasons medically for the migraine. But I think certainly we can say that the way we are emotionally can trigger certain things. I think that's true. So, you know, it mightn't cure the migraines, or the cancer for that matter. But I think we certainly can see there is a role. So, I mean, yeah, for sure you could say that, but not the main cause. Definitely not. But I think it's reasonable. I mean, if our emotions are really neurotic and ridiculous, it's going to exacerbate whatever's happened, you know, whatever our tendency is, sickness or whatever. For sure, I think. Did you understand?
Yeah.
Good. Good. That's a good point. Anybody who wants to speak in your language, please forgive me. I only speak Australian. So any other questions? Yes, go on.
I have a question regarding the way I understand it.
Yeah.
Is that for Buddhists it's important
Yeah.
to know about their past lives.
Well, to know about,
Or is it-
no. I wouldn't say to know about. But if you're studying Buddhism, like I like I wanted always in my own life the big picture. So I like the big picture. Some people are Buddhists, they just do the meditation, and that's perfectly fine. But I like the bigger picture about karma, where you are, reincarnation, these things. So if you're a serious Buddhist, from the point of view that I'm saying, and knowing the big picture, you would factor that in a very major way. In other words, in just the same way that you know today, if you've got diabetes, you then look back 20 years ago that maybe you ate the wrong food. So there's still, all of this is the relationship. We've got that in the world, that what I am now is the fruit of what happened in the past. But Buddha's view of the past just goes further than childhood, that's all. But so, yes, of course, we all understand reasonably what we are now is the fruit of any kind of past, whether it's yesterday, the day before. And indeed, in Western psychology, we go to the past of mummy and daddy and the grandparents. So it's the same idea that the Buddha would say you factor in, at least without, you don't have to remember it, but you factor that in, that you come into this life with your tendencies, you know. It's not just coming out of the blue, so it just doesn't come out of the sky. So that's a major point, but not to remember them necessarily. You don't need to. No. In other words, you don't need to know, I've got this pimple here because I ate that M&M on that particular day. You just learn the general law, too many M&Ms. You understand? That's enough learning. You understand? What else, people? Well, M&Ms, I eat Smarties. You eat Smarties in Australia, M&Ms America, isn't it? Okay, that'll do. Have some lunch. Come on.